Boys and girls, welcome back. I have a new pattern here for you today. Switching a lot of my patterns over to soft tackles here for the next month or so. Gonna mess around with them. But what we have here is a March Brown soft tackle. Okay. Different things that I've added to it this year. We have a wire twist as opposed to using dubbing or something along that line. I wanted it to be a little bit heavier. A size 14 hook. I got a 3mm copper bead on here. Finally got a hold of one of these Brahma chickens. I wanted to try that out, compare it to some of the partridge that I've tied soft tackles with before, and it's pretty comparable, if not better. The sizing is consistent, and I'm able to get size 12s out of this consistently. I've been able to work a few feathers to get them down to size 14, and when you start wrapping these soft tackles around the hook, that length is important. So we don't really want it longer than the body. And the advantage to this type of pattern, which is pretty much a basic pattern as far as like a Euro-nymphing type of a soft tackle, this bead I have set back about a bead length from the eye of the hook, so that we can tie the soft tackle in on the front and use this bead to our advantage. So typically with a soft tackle, if you saw trout candy here a couple weeks ago, there's no bead. The bead was in front, so there was nothing to prevent those fibers from, when they get wet, just laying flat along the hook like that. Typically that's what you're running into. The advantage of a good soft tackle is that these feathers are springy. There's a lot of flex in them, so that when the water hits it, they're constantly moving back and forward depending on the tension on the line, and more or less it looks like a swimming insect. So if you put this in the water, and depending on the type of feather that you use, some feathers will absorb the water a little bit, so to speak, and they'll lay flat and get matted along the back. You see a lot of caddis swimming around in the creeks. That's what they look like. A mayfly emerger, which essentially I guess you could consider this, it's going to have a lot more moving parts, and you're going to be having swimming legs, you're going to be having wing buds coming off, and you kind of want an impression of all of that to happening at one time. And the legs are sparse enough that you can create that. When I was talking about feathers here a couple weeks ago, I always use, or usually use, just a half of a feather. I peel off one side of it so that I can get the stem of the feather to wrap around the hook. It can protect it a little bit more because you can fit wraps in there, but also it keeps it sparse. I mean, these bugs that are in the creek, they have 6 legs, maybe a couple of antennas. So when you start wrapping the whole feather on there, it takes up so much space for one, but it kind of defeats the purpose of the soft tackle. You want these to move. You want them to be able to be seen moving. And when you put so much on the top there that it's more or less forcing water, away from it, instead of, these limbs flexing a little bit. The nice thing about putting that bead back is, it can't, when the water does hit it, the bead kind of stops them from laying back. So that's an advantage to this type of a pattern, and I'll be tying a number of these over the next handful of weeks. I have a couple of different pheasant tail ones that I want to tie with different colors in here, but regardless of the soft tackle element that we have here, I wanted to spend some time on twisting wire. I tried to do a video here for you a couple weeks ago to show you what I pay attention to when you're doing this, and it's really hard to get that kind of detail with using my iPhone, which is what I use for all this kind of stuff. I would urge you to try it, mess around with it. I'll show you some of the technique here as far as how I go about doing that, and we can get into tying this bug here. So let's go over ingredients first before I take all this apart. What I have here is 3mm copper bead. This is an Orvis 1 POR size 12. That's their caddis hook. For the wires, I have two different color brown wires that I've twisted together. This one is just brown. This one is what they call March brown. You can kind of see the color differences. The wrap or counter wrap is going to be a silver. For the dubbing, ice dub pheasant tail. That's real nice. The thread we're using is just Semperfli Nano Silk Brown. Orange works well too. And this is the Brahma Hen label. What we're looking at there. And this is kind of what it looks like. Great color to it. Almost all of these feathers are very similar. Even the ones at the bottom, tend to get a little bit bigger. But yeah, it's nice. You get some of these little ones underneath the wings and things like that. You could really tie some nice stuff. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. Let's get into showing you how I twist this wire. So what I typically do, I'll turn my vise upside down, and I will take 2 equal lengths of wire. I use my base on my for my vise is like a measuring type thing, and it's 6 inches long, and that's kind of what I've cut these at. So what I do here, these are the same diameter wire. I will fold these kind of apart so that I can twist them with my fingers, and I'm looking to get about 4 or 5 twists in there. The only reason for this, looks like this, is so that I can fit this in my vise. Okay, so I turn that upside down, and by twisting them together, the vise can grab it a little bit better without breaking the wire, which can happen. So here we got, our 2 wires. I'm gonna get a dubbing twister. I'll hold these wires together. Now this has a hook on it. I will take these wires down to the very end, grab a hold of them, and I will wrap this around here twice, and then wrap it around the wire twice, just so that we're preventing the wire from breaking, because you are putting this under a lot of tension. And then I will change the angle here so that it's flat. Most of these winders or spinners spin everything counterclockwise, and what I pay attention to, I doubt you can see that, I'll try to show it to you anyway. When we're looking at this wire, it starts to spin these up. You cannot do this by hand consistently, so this is a neat little trick to do that. But the 2 different colors, you can kind of see the spacing on them. You hold them up to the light, and it's that spacing that is going to determine the look of your bug. So this type of spacing here is a lot tighter. When you're wrapping that around the hook, sometimes those little patterns in there can line up. And I just keep twisting this till I get the spacing that I want. And it does look better if it's pretty tight. as opposed to being loose. And I have an example here. I'll put a picture of this on here. This one here, super tight. This one here is not as tight. 1 to 2 millimeter are what these bandings are. This is less than that. And depending on the size of the hook, or if you're wrapping it just on the hook or over a body, that can, kind of change the look of, what you're going to be bouncing up against. So the difference that you're going to run into from using wires to wires, the most that I will tie up will be like 3. This is just a blue and white. You can kind of see, or blue and silver rather. You can kind of see that barring a little bit better on that. The silver really makes the colors pop. But you also, like here is a different banding. This is silver added to those 2 colors. It can kind of take over sometimes. So if you use a gold type color, mixed in with what you have, and I'll show you what those look like. I'll take pictures of all these. It just kind of changes the look of it a little bit. So mess around with it, see what you like, tie some bugs up, try to tie your wires tighter, tie them looser, see if you like one pattern or another. Sometimes the pattern determines that. So let's go ahead and get started on our bug here, and we'll walk through some of these other things. So I put these on ahead of time, obviously, but try to put these beads, I'd say a bead length back, 1 or 2 millimeters, and that'll give you room enough to build a head and tie in that soft tackle at the end. So first thing that we want to do, I can find. Okay, for the tail, we're going to use some horsetail, and I'm going to pick out somewhat. There's never a straight piece, but this one's got a good brown color to it. You can kind of see all the different colors you get in there. I would urge you to get some of the stuff. I've been using it for everything. It's very flexible. You can even tie it in knots, and it'll still come back to the original shape. So I've been using it a lot for tails and antennas, legs, anything along that line. So we're gonna get this started on here. I just do kind of a fold over technique with this one, just because it is so flexible. But I'm probably going to make that body at least as long as the hook, if not a little bit longer. March browns are one of the biggest mayflies outside of the drakes, obviously. But the type of fishing that I do on the little Hannah, I like the fast water. And these March browns, if you ever seen clingers, that type of a mayfly, essentially that's what March browns, that's the type of nymph that March browns are. They're usually in that fast water on the rocks. They're bigger legs, just more muscular, I guess, if you can call that. But yeah, so you want to tie them a little heavier, but when they come out, they will hatch on the bottom from the nymph stage, then swim to the surface, where they will molt a little bit and start drying off, and then they fly away. So this is a good pattern to tie if you're going to be fishing that type of thing, and if you hit the things right, the timing right in the spring. Okay. We're just going to trim both of those at the same time. And I will go underneath. Can get them separated. Excuse my fingers. Okay, so a little bit longer, definitely split. The tails are distinctive. Usually only 2. Now we're going to tie in our silver wire on one side of the hook. I will tie this down a little bit further, like the silver wire, right to the base of the tail. The other wire that we're going to use, I'm going to tie a little bit short, because when we wrap that silver wire, I like to put a couple wraps on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to put this one right on the top. I would say maybe a millimeter. Or so short of that silver wire. Just gonna try to smooth this out a little bit so that wire can wrap. The body will look a little bit better. We're gonna hang this. I always try to fold that forward first, and then we're just going to wrap these up, touching wraps. A little bit of backward pressure just to try to keep your wraps tight. And I know you can't see it on the video, but yeah, the colors that you get out of twisting this wire are just great. You know, there's just shades of this color, shades of that color when everything gets put together, and yeah, it's just a great effect. Trim that just long enough to get it in the hole there. Okay, now the silver wire is going to be counter wrapped. We don't want to wrap it the same direction as the other wire, because it's so thin it'll go down in between. So I'm going to put 2 wraps underneath here, going down the hook, and then start to go And when you see these March Browns, they're pretty distinctive. The ones that I see on a Lohana are more brown, but you see them as almost like a yellowish brown, to where the body does have a yellow tinge to it sometimes. But the one thing that is distinctive is the barring on it. You know, extremely bright barring. Let's use my good scissors for that. And I'll put a picture on there so that you can see it here. And this silver wire helps that stand out a good bit. Okay, separate tails. Okay, and that's the wire part of the bug. The rest is pretty easy. I'm gonna get some that pheasant tail ice dub. Put that on there. Doesn't have to be fancy. Do want to anchor that. And I'm just going to transfer that thread, you know, behind the bead, and then coat the front of this with string. Now I hang it on the back of my vise here so I can keep that pressure on the way back. Now when we're putting these feathers on here, okay, the length of the feather is what's important. And here you can see this one's probably about perfect for this bug. It's okay to go a little bit longer if you're using this bead back, because you can't compress, you know, the the feather won't compress over that bead. That feather twisted on me, and I want to wrap back over more of this end of the thing, just to try to secure that a little bit better. Get one or two wraps behind it. There we go. That's better. Now we're going to trim this off. And that will allow us to wrap this right up against the hook. Sometimes I'll use hackle pliers, other times I don't. Got a really good stem here. See how these things are just popping all over the place, trying to keep them all headed the same direction. Okay. Now, the one thing that I saw this guy from Rosebud Bait and Tackle did a video on the soft tackle. Our typical, you know, move is we want to pull these back and then back wrap towards the bead here, so that we can push those feathers back. I would say not to do that, and just use the tension of your string, and it's just going to push them back a little bit to get them out of the way, and kind of that's the end result. Build up a little bit of a head here. I'm not wrapping back into the fibers, I'm just building a head in front. Tie that off. Take that off. A little bit of UV on that head. Cook that up a little bit. Okay. Now for some preening. Want that to be nice and clean. There you go, boys and girls. March brown, wired March brown variant. Make a name. Tie some up. This one does really well. Anything on a low handle that's brown does well. Yeah, if you want to change colors, you can change the hackle color that you have. You can change obviously bead color, everything like that. But to try to replicate some of these others, just tie your regular pattern, tie the bead back a little bit, and that'll give you room to put some soft hackle on it. Might be a game changer for you, but give it a shot, see how you do. Tie some up, go catch some fish. It's about that time. All right guys, thanks for stopping by. We'll see you.